We'll streamline the start of it. Nice, thanks for all being here. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, hello everyone. So this is really exciting. My name is Lisa. I'm going to facilitate us talking to Dave. And as you know, with all the strike stuff, there's certain topics we're not going to talk about, and that's okay because there's so much other great stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
And so
well, UPS didn't go on strike, so I can discuss my delivery route.
But don't give out your address. That's
all right.
A huge mistake some other celebrities have made, and you know, it's. They're regretting it. So, oh my gosh, we have so much cool stuff to talk about. So this makes me so happy. Okay, So I recently discovered Dave's new podcast. Anyone else?
Oh, really?
Oh, a couple of you. Okay, and for the rest of you,
good.
you're in for a treat. All right, well, we're gonna talk about that and promote it a bit.
Yes, because we can't talk about anything else. Which is the weirdest panel ever. Yeah, because
we can talk about things like how you take your coffee.
Yeah, constantly.
Me too.
But we can talk about, and I don't know, hopefully you guys will all find this interesting. But yeah, I recently started a podcast called Really with my friend Tom Wheeler, who's a screenwriter and novelist, and it's a podcast about the UFO or UAP phenomenon. So we've been talking about that a lot. So anyone here interested in UFOs? Is that
yeah?
Oh, good.
Everyone
good.
Should be.
So we've been doing that lately, and it's been a crazy month and a half for UFOs.
Okay, wow. I know, right?
Yeah.
This is like, it's been in the news quite a bit, but I want to rewind a little bit. Why do you have such an interest in UFOs and aliens?
Well, I think it's something I was interested in, like, from childhood, like the earliest. Like, I used to watch this. Used to be this terrible British show called UFO back in 1971. You remember it? And I thought it was great when I was, 7 years old. I was wrong. But I remember that was my first introduction to UFOs as a little kid, watching this show of these sort of conical-shaped UFOs and this top secret force that was fighting UFOs. They kept Shadow, yes. That was in the basement of a movie studio. They were hidden, and every week they would blow up UFOs, and oddly, it would seem to be the same UFO and from the exact same angles every week. But I remember it was exciting because the show was set in the far future year of 1983. And all the cars had gull-wing doors, so they were, ahead of Tesla. But I was always aware of UFOs and interested in them, just as a pop culture thing as a kid growing up. And then, of course, I was still pretty young when Close Encounters of the Third Kind came out.
It's such a great movie.
Which was an amazing movie, and based largely on real accounts that came out through real information that he got from J. Allen Hynek, who was the lead researcher of Project Blue Book back in the 50s up to 69. And then, so it was always something I was interested in, but my interest would go up and down, kind of, I'd put it away and go, and you'd hear all the debunking and you go, oh, I guess it's not true, and you move on. And then in 97, there was something called the Phoenix Lights. Anyone heard about that? Where thousands of people saw a gigantic craft traveling slowly and silently across the city of Phoenix. In fact, it traveled over a 200-mile path that was tracked. Over 200 miles, traveling very slowly and silently. And of course, the explanation that was put out was it was flares, which is weird because flares generally, you shoot them up. And then they do this thing, they fall. But apparently they shot some flares that went rogue. And these flares decided they were just going to amble across an entire state. And in fact, they were witnessed. And eventually the governor of Arizona came out and admitted that he saw it and had no idea what it was. Fife Symington came out and admitted, he said, no, I saw it. I'm a pilot. I'm an military aviator. And he said, no, that thing was this, about the size of a football field, and I've never seen anything like it, and it was clearly not from Earth.
You know, and I mean, UFO stands for unidentified flying object. So
Yes.
it doesn't. So when you hear UFO, it doesn't necessarily have to be an alien.
No.
They use that to describe anything that you see in the sky and you don't know what it is.
Yeah.
It's unidentified.
Yeah, well, people forget that the term UFO was invented by the military because they didn't want to have to keep saying flying saucer. So it was let's give it a more science-y name,
Yeah.
and now that's the military that once again has changed the name to unidentified anomalous phenomena.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, which is now the new term for it,
That's
which is a more
yeah.
accurate term. It
Yeah,
is.
actually, I've been hearing that. Okay, now, all right, makes sense. So you answered that for me. Cool.
Yeah, but yeah, and the Foo Fighter, of course, going back to pre-war, the wartime, which I believe there's a popular rock and roll band named after those. So you've got this history of these orbs going back to World War II, and so I got more, and I went up and down with it. The French put out a report in 2003 called the Cometa Report too, in which a group of French scientists, oddly enough, psychologists, police department, and military did a study of all the UFO sightings then in France. And after their study, they put out a report called the Cometa Report, and they announced that their findings were that UFOs are real, and an extraterrestrial hypothesis is the most likely explanation. And that was 2003. And again, but still, people sort of continue to sort of go, oh, ignore it, because we've been conditioned to think if you talk about UFOs, everyone's going to think you're crazy. And that only people living in the woods in beat up old trailers ever see UFOs, which is not the case. I mean, even I know a lot of people say, well, why do they only fly over the middle of nowhere? Mm-hmm. And you have to sort of explain, well, statistically, the highest number of UFO sightings are where the highest number of people are. Mm-hmm. So you get your most UFO sightings over New York City and Los Angeles. Because basically anywhere there's a lot of people, you're going to have more sightings because the craft are flying everywhere.
But we do tend to do that. Like the person that talks about the existence of extraterrestrials, we tend to be like, oh yeah, that guy's crazy. Like even in the movie, the wonderful movie Independence Day.
Yeah.
Okay, so when Randy Quaid's character, he's like the crazy guy, like aliens are real, right? Now later in the movie, when they all know aliens are real, every time he says something, they're still like that crazy guy. I'm like, great, you've all confirmed.
And then it turns out later, Randy Quaid is a crazy guy.
It is confirmed.
Yeah, I think he's still in Canada somewhere, right? We can't get him out.
Nobody knows.
Yeah. But it's true. And it's a stigma that has destroyed lives, mm-hmm. like destroyed careers. People, military people in science. There was a physicist named James McDonald had his career destroyed because he came out and said the government is covering up UFOs. And he was in on some of the panels studying them.
Why is the government covering it up? Why do they care?
They're terrified. And maybe we all should be more frightened than we are. Because I think people in the military, they do know things that we don't have access to. And they say, oh, I think they do. They do. Yeah. I had a pretty interesting dinner with Lou Elizondo, who ran the Pentagon's ATIP program, and I'm not saying everyone in the military knows everything that's going on. Are you? So you know? Have you seen something?
In Iraq.
You saw? Well, yeah. Well, there's a lot of spheres and things flying around Iraq, right?
A lot of bombs too.
Bombs, yeah, bombs are a problem too. But yeah, so it's so when you're on the lookout for bombs, you're kind of paying attention to the airspace over you, I'm guessing, because there's an existential interest in looking at the sky. But did you see some unidentified stuff or weird stuff?
Yeah.
What?
At the time,
Yeah. What did you see?
Just stuff flying over where it was supposed to be clear airspace.
Yeah.
You know, there wasn't, like, I saw one thing one time, but it turned out to be a Tomahawk.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And then at other times, there was aircraft flying in the airspaces where there was not supposed to be anything flying.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's definitely. I mean, we've seen there was that video that Kirkpatrick even showed of a sphere flying over. I think that was in Iraq too. Yeah. But yeah, is this weird that we're talking about this? Yeah.
I know.
Because yeah.
But you know what, Dave, to his point, we've all had to deal with government employees at one time or another, and it does make you kind of think, like, how could the government be like capable of keeping any secret? Like, they just seem so incompetent. But that's kind of what you're saying. Like, there's just a few high ups that would.
Well, it's also the fact is that they haven't kept it a secret at all. Everyone's been talking about it for 80 years now.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, yeah. Good to know. Yeah. Oh, I understand that. Yeah. Yeah. No. But it's. I'm saying, like, people have come out. Things have leaked. People have seen stuff. People have reported stuff. But one thing is that they've been really good at is creating an atmosphere where. Even though all this information keeps leaking out, if you talk about it, you're crazy.
Exactly.
Yeah, plausible deniability, and they made really good use of people that do what I do for a living, comedians, and I think that's as much as I can say about it. But yeah, I mean, comedians and the film industry and the television industry were all kind of made use of by the government to make the subject ridiculous. And comedians are lazy; they'll go for low-hanging fruit. So
that's true.
So we'll go after the we'll talk endlessly about the anal probes if you give them a chance.
Yeah.
And
what's more fun to talk about than anal probes?
I know. Yeah.
Why are all the secrets to the universe up our butts?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, ask my proctologist. He's obsessed with my asshole. Yes. Well, they don't anymore, do they? They're afraid of it. Uranus, which somehow is better. Yeah, and then what else were we talking about? And then I guess the other thing was what happened in 2017. When the New York Times wrote, Leslie Kean and Ralph Blumenthal wrote this big article that outed the Pentagon for having a secret UFO study program that Lou Elizondo ran. And before that, there was an even larger program called OSAP that was being run by the Bigelow Company. And there's a guy named Jay Stratton who was kind of like he's sort of the Forrest Gump of UFOs. That he's just been everywhere, involved with every program. He's been behind the scenes setting up. He worked. I don't know if he worked on NIDS, but he worked in setting up OSAP program. Worked on setting up ATIP. Worked on setting up the UAP task force that. David Grush, who just became a whistleblower and came out and said that the government has a program of UFO crashed and abandoned UFO retrieval program and reverse engineering programs that have been ongoing for decades. And this is a guy who he was assigned to do research into UAPs by the UAP task force, and he's a high-level intelligence officer, 14-year intelligence officer, has the highest possible clearances, and over 4 years, he was able to verify to his satisfaction that these programs existed, and he's come forward now with it. Wow. So we're now on the precipice of living in a world where, in response to Grush's whistleblower complaint, which is still mostly confidential, you had Kristen Gillibrand writing legislation to try and shut off the funding to secret dark money black projects working with UFOs in direct response to what David Grush has said. And then you had Chuck Schumer come out and write other legislation to claw back everything out of the world of secrets into into disclosure. To basically, he's writing legislation that says all all material and documentation about UFOs should be considered declassified unless an argument can be made to keep them classified, and that's what his new legislation would do. And it also would exercise eminent domain to grab craft back from people like Lockheed Martin. So, like, Chuck Schumer's a pretty serious guy. Pretty powerful, one of the most powerful politicians in the world. And he's writing laws that are very detailed and are clearly based on the top secret evidence he's heard from David Grush. Wow. So we really are. We're like sitting on the precipice of a world in which we have public acknowledgement of non-human intelligences, according to Grush, that there's more than one that are on Earth, interacting with us and doing things that we don't really understand, and that we have their craft, we have some of their bodies, and we're working on it.
Where are the bodies?
Grush says he knows, and has told the inspector general of the intelligence community. He's told them where the bodies are. He's told them where the craft are, what the names of the programs are, who's running the programs. So our elected officials have access to all of this information right now, and they seem to be working on a trajectory to give that information to all of us, which is really weird. That politicians have decided to do something productive. I'm not sure if they're allowed to do that. I'm not sure what their union stance is. But yeah, I mean, it's a weird world we're living in.
That in itself is weirdly suspicious, and when speaking of suspicious, what about the connection to the religious world?
Yeah, well, there's definitely that. Well, one of the things Grush said in his whistleblower complaint is that the first downed craft that the U.S. got possession of was one that crashed in the 30s in Italy, in Magenta. And this was when Mussolini was the dictator of Italy, and that they had this craft that crashed, and then after and Mussolini set up a program to study it, and after the war, it had basically the Pope facilitated the transfer of this downed craft from Italy to the United States. So the Pope was personally involved in a UFO retrieval program.
Which I believe that's what the Pope Mobile is. It's definitely a spacecraft.
Yeah. It's definitely not sexy. It's not a, no.
Well, I don't know.
I mean, it's a good thing he's not looking to get laid, because you're not going to get laid in that car.
I mean, I think it's kind of sexy, it's like a dome.
Take
we're
that
all
up.
into what we're into.
Yep. But where else can we talk? I don't know where else we go now.
I mean,
Black Forest, right?
Huh?
Do you know about Black Forest crash back in the 40s?
Oh, this is the German crash, right? Oh. I know a little bit about it. I haven't. It's one of the things where it's hard to know what's real about it. It's certainly in light of everything else that we're now getting information is true. There's certainly no reason to write it off. But I don't think the Nazis were ever successful in reverse engineering any alien tech, or we'd all be speaking German. That's the thing. I think it's weird, because people talk about the V2 rockets and all that came out. Well, were they only able to build these because of help from the aliens? And I keep thinking, it's kind of the same thing I have when people say the aliens built the pyramids. I'd buy it if there was even one electric light bulb inside the pyramids. If there was any technology in there that wasn't Stone Age. And the same thing with the V2 rockets. Like, if aliens were helping them, why would they give them technology that's 1,000 years old? That's like the Chinese invented rockets a long time ago, and the V2 rocket was just a really good version of that. So I'm skeptical that the Nazis had a lot of alien technology at their fingertips. Or as I said, I'm pretty sure we would have lost the war, because the stuff that's flying around is. Was it David Fravor and Ryan Graves in the UAP congressional hearing just a few days ago were asked about it, and they both said that if the craft they saw decided to be hostile, there was nothing on Earth they could do to defend against it. And David Fravor went on to say why he thought it was a security issue, because if another country does have a craft that they can reverse engineer and harness that kind of technology, he said whatever country gets this technology can appear out of nowhere, do whatever they want, and disappear. And there is no defense against this technology. So if one of our adversaries, if Russia or China, was more successful than we've been in reverse engineering this stuff, then we would be living in a world that's run by whatever country has the tech. And and I think as a Canadian, I'll tell you, America is a bit of an empire. And if America really had control of this tech, America would use it. And America would use it to further its interests and to control other governments. And because that's, the American military is scattered all over the planet, maintaining order for America. So I'm pretty sure if we had it, we'd be using it, And also, we got to remember that the United States is the only country on Earth that has used every single thing it's ever built. So I think we would use it,
Do you think that our presidents know these secrets?
I think most of them don't. I think a few of them have. I think most of them have not been read in on it. Some of them have tried. I think Jimmy Carter tried. Jimmy Carter, who had his own UFO sightings, he tried to get the information, and he was shut out. Bill Clinton tried to get the information, and working with John Podesta back in that time, and they were shut out. They were basically told they didn't have a need to know.
So what about the Men in Black who investigated the Flatwoods Monster and the Mothman site?
I don't know that much about the Mothman stuff, so I couldn't really comment on it. And I certainly would not. I think it would be kind of foolish to deny that some kind of organization that could be described as the Men in Black exists. I think enough people have been visited by them that we can probably just the regular things we know about our government is enough to make us think, well, yeah, there's some scary branches that we don't know about. But I don't really know anything about the Mothman stuff, except what I saw in the movie a number of years ago.
Have you ever interacted with Bob Lazar at all, or much about Bob Lazar?
I haven't. I've never met Bob. I'm very good friends with Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp. And Jeremy made that movie Bob Lazar and Area 51 and the Flying Saucers. And I had a little bit to do with getting Bob onto Joe Rogan's podcast. Yeah, because Joe and I worked together on a show called News Radio, and that's all I can say. But when we were working together, we were both into UFOs back then, and we talked about it a lot. So I was going to go on Joe's podcast a few years ago, and so texted Joe the night before and said, Joe, you're going to be very excited that I've gotten really deep into UFOs again. And Joe texted back, it's all fucking bullshit. What? Joe? And he said, yeah, I did this show, Joe questions everything, and everyone I talked to was crazy, and it was all garbage and lies. And I said, really? And so then I said, well, I don't know, have you seen, I don't think the phenomenon wasn't out yet, but I talked about James Fox's other movie, Out of the Blue, and I Know What I Saw, and then I mentioned the Bob Lazar movie. And so this was probably around 10 o'clock at night. And then around like 4:30 in the morning, I get another message from Joe, who had been up all night watching UFO documentaries. And it just said, I'm back in.
Well, it's a topic I love to discuss because I don't know if there are aliens, but when I think about the possibility of it, I don't know how there couldn't be aliens. When you think about how unfathomably immense our universe is, it's infinite. How could there not be other life out there? So it's a thing that I love to talk about, and I love how much you know about this as well. Now, I'm curious, how do you feel about time travel? And because sometimes I think, well, what if aliens are just us, like visiting us from another time?
Well, it's a popular theory that some of the phenomena, and again, I think I use the plural phenomena because I think the answer to all this is more than one thing. But a lot of people say, well, maybe this is humans from the future. Maybe the little gray aliens that we're seeing are what happens to us over evolution, which is we should really work on our upper bodies in the future.
You would think with plastic surgery, our boobs would be bigger at least.
I mean, we're already getting prettier. Why wouldn't we keep getting prettier? And then there's also so there's, I guess you'd call that extratemporal travel as opposed to extraterrestrial travel. And then there's also extra-dimensional travel. That these are craft that are popping in and out of other dimensions or higher dimensions. That maybe we are really living in like an 11-dimensional space, but we only have senses for 3 of them. So like if we were a 2-dimensional species, there's a book called Flatland. So if a sphere landed in a 2-dimensional universe, all the people in that universe would see is a circle. They would have no idea that the sphere existed. They would just see a circle.
Flat earthers.
Yeah. So yes. So the notion is that what we may be seeing is just a part of some something that's existing in a multi-dimensional space, and we're only able to perceive 3 dimensions of it.
Wow.
My own theory that popped in my head, just because I never like to feel comfortable. Because for a long, I kept thinking, well, look, here's the thing: if the UFOs have been coming here for thousands of years, which they show up in cave paintings. Vimana? Yeah. Where is that? In Indian. Oh, yes, in Indian lore. Yeah, yes. And they show up in Renaissance paintings. They show up in Roman paintings from the Roman Empire.
Which paintings do you know specifically? Because I want to look these up.
Oh yeah, and there's another one of the is it of the Madonna or something? I forget. There's with a UFO in the background.
Really?
There's a UFO in the background. There's a person looking up at the UFO in the background.
Whoa.
So they show up everywhere. There's tons of paintings going back to like 4,000, 5,000-year-old paintings of what look exactly like the Greys. But I thought, well, they've been coming here all this time and they haven't destroyed us or enslaved us so far. Maybe we're going to be okay. Yeah. Or here's an even worse idea. If they are extraterrestrial travelers, and if they're traveling, if they've gotten around the whole speed of light thing, they're probably also extratemporal travelers at the same time. So the fact is, the UFOs could have arrived here half an hour ago, but they arrived at every point in history simultaneously.
Oh.
So to them, they're just getting their first look at us, but it looks to us like they've been here for thousands of years. But they may just be looking around and going, should we destroy this? And they might not have made up their minds yet. So if they don't exist in time the way we understand time, then we can't take comfort in how long they've been here.
And also, they might just find us very boring.
Well, maybe.
Why?
I mean, I think I'm proof of that today.
No.
Yeah.
What do you think of the fact that Stephen Hawking said that if aliens come here, they're going to come here to take our resources?
Well, yeah. Well, I think Hawking also. I think he said we shouldn't go out of our way to be visible. Which, again, it's a bit of an anthropocentric view of things. It's assuming that the aliens will be as horrible as we are. And, let's hope they aren't. But certainly, they could just be interested in our resources, or they might even be interested in our planet as an overall ecosystem, but they might not see us as a particularly special part of it. They might even see us as a problem that maybe they could fix, so that all the other animals can get on with their lives.
They might be terrified of us.
They might be, but then again, I don't know. Maybe just philosophically terrified by us. Certainly not physically.
Or if they're ammonia-based, we might be poisonous to them.
Well, that would come in handy. Let's hope they're ammonia-based.
Also, maybe.
So every time I smell cat pee, I'll think it's an alien now.
Whoa.
Well, that was the thing that in the Virginia crash, there was a UFO crashed in Virginia, Brazil, and which might be what you're talking about. And the witnesses there all said that they had these aliens that they encountered had this really strong, overpowering ammonia odor coming from them that was disgusting. They all said it was like this disgusting smell that was really hard to be around. And there was even a police officer who found an injured alien, and picked it up and carried it to their patrol car, and they took it to a hospital. And that officer died very quickly of unexplained infections.
Oh my God.
It was never explained what killed him.
Are you, by any chance, planning on writing a book about this? Because you know so much about this topic.
Oh no, I'm just a good echo of people who know a lot more, who are a lot smarter than me.
Come on, but also you're fun and funny. Like, you're the person who should be delivering this information.
Well, maybe I could write, like sort of the UFO for morons version.
Yes.
Yeah.
As a moron, I need that book.
Yeah, UFOs for dummies. No, I don't think. No, dummies are too smart. I got to go for morons.
You got to go for way dumber.
Free boobs like in Total Recall.
I
You
don't.
have a recommendation for me to buy a telescope.
Yeah. I don't know if I believe it. It's something I hope for.
And will we have 3 hands later in the future?
Yeah. Well, if evolution does its job. Yeah.
Dating aliens. How is that going to happen?
Which?
Dating aliens.
Well, if you follow the abduction stories, a lot of people kind of have been dating aliens. Some, mostly not by choice. But that's the story. So there's been a lot of hybrid breeding programs where humans are brought up and they're interbred with aliens and mixed. The DNA is mixed, and
This explains my ex-boyfriend, honestly.
yeah, and fetuses go missing from pregnant women's bodies, and their doctors can't explain it. There's been a lot of that's not. There's a lot of that. Lizard people, yes. Well, there are those, aren't there? But I don't know. Does anyone here had an experience?
Ooh, good question.
Anyone that they're willing to talk about?
I mean, this is
Anybody?
the environment where kind of everything goes, and no
Yeah.
one's going to think you're weird.
Yeah, I can tell you, I saw a UFO.
This was going to be a question of mine. Okay, so let's get to it.
All
I
right.
wanted to see what your personal experiences are. Please, thank you.
Well, that's the thing is, and as I said, it was largely an intellectual interest for many years, and mostly one where I was more than anything I was fascinated by the fact that. Of how much evidence there is that something really weird is going on, and how effectively we've all been socially conditioned to look the other way. And to the extent that even I know that good friends of mine who read the New York Times, cover to cover, smart people. When the New York Times had a front page story saying that there was a top secret UFO program and that UFOs are real, I have all these friends who not only didn't read the article, but it didn't register in their consciousness that there was an article. And that's how the conditioning works. They're so conditioned to.
That's because you have to subscribe to the New York Times.
Oh, these are total left-wing bastards. We're just like myself. So sorry, folks, but I'm a commie from Canada. But I subscribe to the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Toronto Star, and the Los Angeles Times. I subscribe to all of those. And what else? Oh, MIT Review. So I liked the fact that to me, it was an intellectual subject. But then a year ago, January, I was out visiting my friend Jeremy Corbell, and we were out walking his dog at night out in the countryside, and it was a beautiful, clear night. And I was looking at the commercial air traffic off on the horizon, and it was it was so clear and beautiful, and it was a very starry sky. And then I said, wow, Jeremy, this would be a great night to see something, because Jeremy, who's been researching this for all of his adult life, had never seen anything either. And about 30 seconds later, Jeremy goes, Dave, turn around. And I turn around, and on the horizon over where I'd been looking at all the commercial traffic was this much larger orangey gold object with 3 white lights on the front of it, and the body of it was pulsing this orangey gold light, and the front lights were pulsating in a white light, and it was moving along sort of an arc around this valley we were in, and we were both just watching this, and it kept getting closer and closer, and it was silent, and I kept thinking, all right, and as soon as this gets close enough, I'm going to know that it's something boring. It's going to prove to be something boring. And it kept getting closer, and it became more clear that this was not something boring. And the weird thing is that neither Jeremy or I said anything or got excited or showed any emotion at all for the whole experience, except at one point when Jeremy just says, I'm not even going to take a picture. And in my head, I'm going, that's weird. But again, I didn't question him on it. We didn't talk. And this thing eventually got around to, basically came in front of us, maybe about 5 miles away from us, hung in the air in front of us for about a minute. And it literally posed in 3/4, like models do on the runway. So you get the most information. And hung there, and then went behind the mountains. And then only after it disappeared did Jeremy suddenly go, dude, that was a UFO. And I went, yeah, I think that was UFO. 'Cause we sort of regrouped and talked about it, and went back, sat around a fire at his place, and just went over it. And he went online and checked to see what might be in the sky that night, and there was nothing. And the next day, I decided, well, I should try to draw what I saw. And one thing, I can't draw. I literally can't draw anything. Worse than a kindergarten student drawing levels. But I opened up my iPad, found an app that I'd never used before, found all the tools I needed, found all the lighting effects I needed, found everything I needed to draw exactly what we saw the night before, and did it in about 15 minutes.
Wow.
And at the end of 15 minutes, went, oh, it's done. And emailed it to Jeremy and said, is this what we saw last night? And he went, yeah, that's exactly what it looked like. Mm-hmm. And again, it's weird because I can't draw at all. And if I was to try and redraw it now, I couldn't do it. And the other weird thing was just that I felt like that as we were looking at this thing, it was in control of how we responded to it.
Whoa.
That we were, all of our emotions were gone. Again, you got me, I've been really excited about the subject, really into it for about 10 years at this point. And Jeremy, who spent his life making documentaries about it, interviewing people, finding sources within the military. He has a lot of sources deep in the military that reach out to him all the time. And he practices getting his phone out to take a picture of a UFO if he ever sees one. He actually literally practices his quick draw. But when this thing came in front of us, the only thing he said out loud is, "I'm not going to take a picture," and I don't know who he was talking to.
Wow.
So that's to me that sort of psychic connection, the connection with consciousness, was even weirder than the thing we saw.
Have you ever shared this image that you drew on this app publicly?
Yeah, I put it out on Twitter. We actually use it as a logo on the podcast as well.
So, have other people seen the image that you've seen, or something similar?
Yes, people have, and actually Lou Elizondo told me that he had been researching an object that looked exactly like what we saw.
Wow.
And actually sent me some weird photos of things.
This is incredible.
So
Wow.
it's a pretty interesting time that we're living in. So I guess it's, so I guess in the long run, it's good we can't talk about TV and movies. Unless I don't know, maybe I can't see the back. Maybe the people towards the back are horribly disappointed by this, but you're still here. So, but it's.
But there's so much more to you than TV and movies. That's
Is
what,
there?
Oh, clearly, and
Yeah.
and and I feel like I can talk about this forever and ever, which is why I'm so glad you have a podcast. And
Yeah, which by the way is called Really? Question mark, exclamation mark, period. And we punctuate that because I say that those are the phases you go through as you start into the UFO rabbit hole. You come into a mild curiosity, huh? And then you get startled, and then eventually you kind of just accept, okay, it's real. And that's, and so that's kind of I found that's the process almost everyone we've interviewed has gone through at some point, where it's just, well, I'm curious, I'll look into that, and oh my God, all right. And so, and it's it's up on podcast platforms. It's also on, you can see the video versions of it on YouTube. I think we've got about 4 of them running right now. 4 or 5, and the last one that was just up was an interview with Leslie Kane, who wrote the New York Times article about ATIP and UFOs with Ralph Blumenthal. So that interview is up right now. And here's the fun part. We interviewed her the week before she and Ralph published the David Grush article about the retrieval programs, and she didn't say a word. She was sitting on the biggest story of her career while we were interviewing her. And the next day, we actually interviewed Ralph Blumenthal as well, separately. And they both were in the process of releasing this story about retrieval programs and reverse engineering.
I have so many more questions, and there's just not enough time on this panel. But you have a table on the
But that's good news,
floor.
isn't it, that we're running out of time?
Yeah, right.
Because certainly when we were walking out here, we were going, what are we going to talk about?
We are, but people can visit you at your table, yeah?
Yes, I'll be out on the floor, yeah.
Okay, and today you're going to be out there after this panel?
Yeah, I
or-
will be,
okay.
yes,
Okay,
yes.
so from this panel, I would imagine you're going to take a little break, get a cup of coffee, and
Oh,
then
yeah.
head back over there. So if you have more questions, because I know, I have so much more that we didn't even touch on, the space program, because I just think it's so weird. I've always thought about this, why did we go to the moon and we went a couple times and just kind of touched it, and then all this time.
See, let's not do that anymore. Yeah.
And what, is there any kind of okay? We can talk about this forever, like I said.
Buildings on the dark side of the moon that kind of put us off.
I have heard that there is some
There's so
talk
much
that
weird
there's structures over there
stuff.
that, yeah.
There's so much weird stuff.
Yeah. Yep.
And then and you touched on what other countries know. It's not just our government. There's so many governments.
Well, there was just a little story released that apparently Canada has been involved with this secret study
Canada too.
of these, as part of the Five Eyes alliance.
But you guys are so nice.
yeah.
It doesn't seem like you'd keep secrets.
Because we're boring. That's why.
We're saying this.
Yeah, no, I'm Canadian. We're boring. Yeah, oh yeah. We'll pull your sweater over your head and you're dead.
And then apologize immediately.
Yeah.
Nothing boring about poutine.
No, that's lethal. Yeah. Here's the other thing, poutine. You talked about poutine. I don't know if anyone here eats poutine. But I got to say, Canada, we very effectively kept that quarantine to Quebec for generations. And then Americans came up and found it, and now it's everywhere.
That's
Yeah.
Poutini's not original, is that what you're telling me?
Poutini's is not. No, no. I grew up in Ontario, and there was no poutine in Ontario for my entire life. Yeah, it's coffee crisp is. Oh, that's proof of God, isn't it? Coffee crisp that a candy could taste that good. Huh? Letterkenny? There's no real town Letterkenny, but there is a real TV show. Yeah. Yeah, those folks are great. Yeah.
Oh, everyone, we want this to continue forever.
All right,
and
but
that's
you
why
want-
you should visit Dave Foley at his table, follow his podcast.
Yeah, watch the
Thank you,
podcast.
everyone, and thank you, Dave Foley.
Yeah, thanks. And I hope we'll settle the strike soon.